I'm Abigail, 32, sitting in my quiet apartment, a coffee mug warming my hands. A photo of my dad, who built our company from nothing, stares back at me. Last night at the company party, Jocelyn, the CEO's wife, humiliated me. My simple dress wasn't fancy enough for her, and she screamed I didn't belong right in front of everyone. Her words burned, but she doesn't know my secret. I hold the power she'd never expect. Have you ever been judged unfairly? Share where you're watching from, and please like and subscribe to hear how I faced this storm. The party was in full swing, string lights casting a warm glow over the downtown venue. I smoothed my navy dress, feeling good about blending in without trying too hard. Glasses clinked, laughter bounced off the high ceilings, and I chatted with Sadie, my friend from the analytics team. She was raving about my latest project, how I'd caught a budgeting error that saved thousands. Her praise felt like a shield proof I belonged here despite the whispers about my quick rise. Then Jocelyn swept in her glittering gown, catching every eye. She was the CEO's wife, all charm and sharp edges, and I braced myself as her gaze landed on me. I offered a polite smile, hoping to slip under her radar. No such luck. She stopped mid-conversation, her voice slicing through the hum of the crowd. Abigail. She said loud enough for heads to turn, that dress is wildly inappropriate for a company event. You're representing us, not some backyard barbecue. My cheeks burned. The room seemed to shrink, eyes darting between us. Sadie froze her glass halfway to her lips. I mumbled an apology, my throat tight, but Jocelyn wasn't done. She stepped closer, her perfume overwhelming. If you can't respect our image, maybe you don't belong here, she said, each word a deliberate cut. I forced a nod, my smile a brittle mask. Inside, I was reeling, my confidence crumbling like dry sand. Gregory. My boss stood nearby, chuckling nervously. I waited for him to step in to say something, anything. He'd always praised my work, promised me a promotion just last week over coffee. But he just sipped his drink, avoiding my eyes. The betrayal stung worse than Jocelyn's words. I excused myself, weaving through the crowd, their whispers trailing me like shadows. Piper, a shy intern, caught my gaze as I passed. Her wide eyes held something like pity, and I looked away, ashamed. In the bathroom, I splashed water on my face, staring at my reflection. The navy dress chosen for its quiet elegance now felt like a mistake. Had I misread the room? My dad's voice echoed in my mind, his old advice about standing tall without flaunting. Be humble, Abigail, but never small. He'd set his hands steady as he showed me how to balance the company's books. I'd worked hard, earned my place, but tonight I felt like an imposter. Was this what he'd prepared me for? To be torn down in front of people I respected, back at the party, I stuck to the edges, sipping water to steady my hands. Sadie found me, her voice low. I'm so sorry, she said. Jocelyn was out of line. I nodded, grateful, but the hurt lingered. I scanned the room, catching Bethany, a senior colleague, leaning toward a group, her lips moving fast. She glanced my way. Her smirk unmistakable. Great, I thought, she's already spinning this. Bethany had never liked me, always dropping hints I was too ambitious, too young for my role. Her gossip felt like another weight pressing down on the night. I stayed until the speeches, clapping mechanically as Gregory praised the team's unity. His words felt hollow, his silence earlier, a louder truth. As the crowd thinned, I slipped out, the cool night air a relief against my flushed skin. In the parking lot, I leaned against my car, the city's hum distant. Jocelyn's voice replayed in my head, her disdain like a splinter I couldn't dig out. Worse was Gregory's inaction, the way he'd let her words stand. I'd trusted him, believed in his mentorship. Now I wasn't sure who I could trust at all. I slid into my car, the leather seat cold against my legs, and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. The party's sting clung to me, Jocelyn's voice looping in my head, but it was Gregory's silence that cut deepest. I started the engine, the low hum steadying me, and drove through the city's glow. A billboard loomed ahead, our company's logo, bold against the night sky. My dad's dream, now mine, felt like a weight I wasn't sure I could carry. My phone buzzed as I pulled into my apartment's lot. A text from Sadie glowed on the screen. I should have said something. "You didn't deserve that." Her words were kind, but they didn't ease the ache. I typed a quick thanks, then shoved the phone in my purse. Inside my apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies every thought. I kicked off my heels, the hardwood cool under my feet, and sank onto the couch. Rummaging through my purse for my keys, my fingers brushed something small and metal. I pulled out an old keychain, the company logo etched into its worn surface. My dad had given it to me when I was 12 after a long day at his office. "Hold on to this, Abigail," he'd said, his eyes bright with pride. "It's a piece of what we're building." I turned it over, the memory sharp. He'd warned me about people who'd smile to your face but sharpen knives behind your back. Had I missed the signs with Gregory, I set the keychain down and opened my laptop, trying to distract myself with emails. Instead, my mind drifted to last week's meeting with Gregory. We'd sat in a corner cafe, sunlight spilling through the windows as he outlined my next steps. "You're on track for a promotion," he'd said, his voice warm. "Your work's impeccable." I'd believed him, felt seen. Now that memory felt like a lie. His laughter at the party a clearer truth. Had he been playing me all along, or was he just too weak to stand up to Jocelyn? My phone buzzed again, this time a voicemail from Aaron, my brother. I hesitated, then played it. His voice was sharp, laced with that familiar bitterness. "Heard you made a splash at the party," he said. "Bet you're loving the spotlight, huh?" I deleted it, my chest tight. Aaron hadn't spoken to me in months, not since he'd accused me of stealing the company from him. Dad left it to me, but Aaron saw it as betrayal. His words tonight piled on Jocelyn's felt like salt in an open wound. I stood pacing the living room, my bare feet silent on the rug. The company wasn't just a job. It was my dad's legacy, the thing I'd sworn to protect. But protecting it meant staying silent about my ownership, blending in as just another employee. I'd done that, kept my head down, worked harder than anyone. And for what? To be humiliated, to have my team turn away, to have Gregory let it happen. I stopped by the window, the city lights blurring as my eyes stung. I thought about calling Sadie, spilling everything. But what would I say? That I owned the company? That I could fire Jocelyn's husband and end this? It'd only make things worse, turn my team against me for hiding the truth. But doing nothing felt like letting Jocelyn win, letting her chip away at everything my dad built. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass, my breath fogging the pain. Something had to give, and I was afraid it might be me. Monday morning hit like a cold wave. I walked into the office, the familiar hum of keyboards and coffee machines doing little to ease the knot in my stomach. Cubicles stretched out under fluorescent lights, but the air felt different, charged with sidelong glances and hushed voices. I kept my head high, my heels clicking on the tile, but every step felt like walking into a trap. Jocelyn's words from the party still echoed, and Gregory's silence gnawed at me. I'd spent the weekend replaying it all, wondering how I'd face the team. I set my bag down at my desk, forcing a smile as colleagues passed. Most nodded, but their eyes darted away too quickly. Bethany, perched at her station, typed furiously. Her lips curled in a way that made my skin prickle. I tried to focus on my inbox, but the screen blurred. I was halfway through a report when Gregory's voice crackled over the intercom, asking me to his office. My pulse spiked. This wasn't his usual casual check-in. His office smelled of leather and stale coffee, the city skyline framed behind his desk. He gestured to a chair, his face tight, like he'd rehearsed this. "Abigail," he said, "we've had some concerns about your professionalism." I froze, my hands gripping the armrests. "Concerns?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He shifted papers, rustling. "It's about the party," he said. "Your attire, your demeanor. It's not aligning with our image. Jocelyn's been vocal about it." I stared at him, the room tilting. Jocelyn. Of course. But hearing it from him, my mentor, the man who'd promised me a future here, felt like a blade. I leaned forward, searching his face for the Gregory I thought I knew. "What specifically?" I asked. "My work's been solid. You said so yourself." He coughed, glancing at his desk. It's not just work, he said. It's perception. We need team players, not distractions. The word landed like a slap. Distraction? I'd saved projects, worked late nights, earned every nod of approval. And now I was a problem because of a dress. Because Jocelyn decided I didn't fit her vision, I wanted to scream to tell him I owned this place, that his job hung on my signature. But the words caught in my throat. Saying it would unravel everything turned my team against me for hiding the truth. Instead, I said, I deserve better than this. He looked away, muttering about needing to keep the peace. Keep the peace. With Jocelyn, not me. I stood my chair, scraping the floor, and walked out. My heart pounding so loud I barely heard his goodbye. Back at my desk, the office felt like a minefield. Bethany's voice carried from the break room, low and venomous. She's always acted like she's above us, she said, loud enough to know I'd hear. Arrogant, that's what she is. A few chuckles followed and my chest tightened. I grabbed my water bottle, needing air, and headed for the hallway. That's when Piper, the intern, appeared, her ponytail bouncing. She pressed a coffee into my hands, her voice barely a whisper. You didn't deserve that, she said, slipping a folded note into my palm. I nodded, too raw to speak, and watched her hurry off. The note was scribbled in blue ink. You're not alone. Keep going. It was small, but it cracked something open in me. Piper saw what I couldn't say, but her kindness only sharpened the pain. I was fighting for a company I couldn't claim, surrounded by people who'd turned on me. Bethany's words. Gregory's warning, the team's silence, they were closing in, and I wasn't sure how much more I could take. I tucked Piper's note into my pocket, the coffee she'd given me already cooling in my hands. The office buzzed on, but I felt like I was underwater, every sound muffled, every glance a weight. I sat at my desk pretending to work, but my fingers hovered over the keyboard, useless. The sting of Gregory's words clung to me, his vague warning about perception twisting in my gut. I kept seeing his face, the way he wouldn't meet my eyes, like I was already gone. I opened my email, hoping routine would ground me, but a new message from Jocelyn sat at the top, addressed to Gregory and copied to me. My heart sank as I read it. We need to address Abigail's disregard for our company's image, it said. Her behavior is a liability. Termination is the only solution. My breath caught the screen blurring. Termination. She wasn't just humiliating me. She was trying to erase me. And Gregory? He hadn't replied, hadn't pushed back. His silence screamed louder than her demands. I shoved my chair back, needing to move, and headed for the break room. The hallway was empty, but whispers followed me, leaking from cubicles. I caught my name, sharp and sneering, and quickened my pace. Inside the break room, Miles, a quiet guy from marketing, stood by the coffee machine. He gave me a small nod, his eyes kind but cautious. I tried to smile, but it faltered. You okay? He asked, pouring creamer into his mug. I shrugged, not trusting my voice. He hesitated, then leaned in. Jocelyn's done this before, he said. Pushed out people she didn't like. She's got Gregory wrapped around her finger. I nodded, my throat tight. Thanks, I managed. But his words only deepened the ache. This wasn't just about me. It was a pattern, and I was her latest target. Back at my desk, I called Sadie, needing someone to anchor me. She picked up on the second ring, her voice low. Abigail, it's a mess, she said. Jocelyn's been in meetings all morning talking about cultural fit. Everyone's scared to cross her. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. Did Gregory say anything I asked? She sighed. He's nodding along like always. My stomach twisted. Sadie was my closest ally here, but even she sounded helpless. Her words heavy with resignation. We hung up and I felt more alone than ever. I opened a drawer, searching for a distraction, and found an old company memo yellowed at the edges. My dad's signature was scrawled at the bottom, his words praising my teenage internship, calling me a natural leader. I traced the ink, my chest tightening. He'd believed in me, built this company for me, but now it felt like a cage. I was fighting for his dream, but every step sank me deeper into quicksand. Jocelyn's email, Gregory's cowardice, the team's whispers. They were suffocating me and I couldn't breathe. My phone lit up with another text from Aaron. Saw your name trending in the family chat, he wrote. Guess you're not Dad's golden girl anymore. I stared at the words, my vision swimming. He didn't know about Jocelyn's email, didn't know I was dangling over a cliff, but his cruelty hit like a shove. He'd always resented me, but this felt personal, like he was gleeful at my unraveling. I dropped the phone, my hands shaking. The office spun the walls, closing in. Jocelyn was coming for my job, my team was slipping away, and my own brother was cheering it on. I pressed my palms to my eyes, willing myself not to break, but the cracks were spreading and I didn't know how to stop them. The boardroom felt like a pressure cooker, all glass walls and sharp edges, the city skyline mocking me through the windows. I sat near the back, my hands folded tightly in my lap as Gregory stood at the head of the table, his tie slightly crooked. The team filed in their faces, a mix of boredom and nerves. Jocelyn perched beside him, her red lipstick stark against her pale skin, labeled a consultant but radiating control. My stomach churned, her email about my termination still burning in my mind. I'd barely slept, my eyes gritty, my heart racing since dawn. Gregory cleared his throat, his voice clipped. We're addressing some staffing changes today, he said, glancing at a folder. My name was on the first page, I could see it from here. Abigail, he said, his eyes skimming past me. We've reviewed your conduct. The dress code violation at the party, combined with team feedback, has led to a decision. I froze, my nails digging into my palms. Violation. The word was absurd, a flimsy excuse, but the room stayed silent. He kept going, his tone flat, like he was reading a grocery list. We're terminating your employment effective immediately. The air left my lungs. Heads turned, some shocked, others blank. Sadie stared at her hands, her jaw tight. Bethany smirked, barely hiding it. Jocelyn leaned back, her eyes glinting with triumph. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to tell them I owned every inch of this building. But my voice caught trapped behind a wall of rage and disbelief. I stood my chair, scraping loud enough to make Miles flinch. Gregory. I said, my voice shaking but clear, what specific feedback? Name one project I've failed, one deadline I've missed. He blinked, papers trembling in his hands. It's not about performance, he mumbled. It's about fit. Jocelyn cut in, her voice ice cold. You're disrespectful, Abigail. You've disrupted our culture. I stared at her, my blood roaring. Culture. She meant her ego, her need to crush anyone who didn't bow. The room spun, my dad's face flashing in my mind, his calloused hands signing the deed that made this company mine. I'd hidden it to protect his vision, to lead without ego, but now it felt like I'd betrayed him. Every late night, every fixed budget, every sacrifice it was for this place, and they were throwing me out like trash. My eyes burned, but I wouldn't cry, not here. Piper, tucked in the corner, fumbled with her phone, her face pale. I barely noticed, too consumed by the fire in my chest. I took a step toward Gregory, my voice low. You're making a mistake, I said. He looked away, his jaw twitching. Jocelyn stood, her heels clicking. Enough, she snapped. Security's on their way. Pack your things. My vision narrowed, her words a match to gasoline. Security, for me. The woman who'd saved this company from collapse. I gripped the table, my knuckles white, the truth clawing at my throat. I could end this now, expose everything but the cost, my team's trust. My dad's dream held me back. I was breaking, and they didn't even know the half of it. I stood frozen, Jocelyn's threat of security ringing in my ears, the boardroom's silence a physical weight. My hands trembled, but I kept them at my sides, refusing to let her see me crack. The door creaked open, a guard hovering awkwardly, his radio crackling. My team watched, some with pity, others with blank stares that hurt worse. I wanted to shout, to tear down the lies piling up around me, but my voice felt buried under the wreckage of the moment. Jocelyn stepped closer, her smile sharp as a blade. You thought you could waltz in here, she said, her voice carrying to every corner, acting like you run the place. You're nothing but a liability. My throat burned, her words stripping away years of work, reducing me to a stranger in my own company. I scanned the room, desperate for an ally. Sadie's eyes were wet, but she stayed rooted, her hands knotted in her lap. Even Piper, still clutching her phone, looked helpless, her earlier courage swallowed by the room's tension. Bethany stood her chair scraping, and I braced myself. "I've worked with Abigail," she said, her tone dripping with false concern. "She's always been defiant, questioning leadership, stirring up trouble." A few nods followed, and my chest caved. Trouble? I'd challenged bad ideas, yes, but only to protect the company, to honor my dad's vision. Now Bethany twisted it, painting me as a rebel to please Jocelyn. The betrayal sliced deeper than I'd thought possible, each nod from my team a fresh wound. I turned to Gregory, my last hope, but he was studying the floor, his pen tapping nervously. "Say something," I thought, my heart pounding. "You know my work. You know me." But he didn't. Instead, he muttered, "We need to move forward. The decision's final." My vision blurred, not with tears, but with rage so raw it scared me. This was my company, my blood and sweat, and they were rewriting me out of it, like I'd never mattered. Piper's movement caught my eye. She slipped her phone into her bag, her hands shaking, and I realized she'd recorded it all. A flicker of hope sparked, but it died fast. What good was proof when the room had already judged me? Jocelyn's voice cut through again, softer now, almost pitying. "You should have known your place, Abigail. Not everyone's cut out for this." I clenched my fists, my nails biting into my palms, the pain grounding me as her words tore open every doubt I'd ever had. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I glanced down, unable to stop myself. A text from Aaron: "Heard you're out. Good riddance." The words hit like a punch, my brother's venom, the final shove over the edge. My dad's dream, my sacrifices, my fight to belong, it all crumbled in that moment, the boardroom, a graveyard for everything I'd built. I looked at Jocelyn, her smirk unwavering, and felt something snap inside. I was drowning in their lies, their betrayal, and I didn't know if I had anything left to fight with. I stumbled out of the boardroom, the guard's radio static fading behind me as I hit the hallway. My legs felt like lead, Jocelyn's smirk, and Aaron's text seared into my mind. The office blurred past a maze of cubicles and averted eyes until I reached the street. The city's pulse thrummed, horns and chatter swallowing my ragged breaths. I sank onto a bench outside a cafe, the autumn air sharp against my skin, and clutched my bag, the weight of Piper's recording inside it, a faint lifeline. Piper caught up her sneakers, scuffing the pavement. "Abigail," she whispered, shoving her phone toward me. I got it all. Jocelyn, Gregory, everything. Her eyes were fierce, a spark in the haze of my shock. I knotted my throat too tight to speak and played the video. Jocelyn's voice crackled through her demand for my firing, laced with venom, Gregory's weak agreement, a gut punch all over again. Piper gripped my arm. "You can use this," she said. "They can't get away with it." I looked at her, this kid who barely knew me, risking everything to stand up. Something shifted, a crack in the despair. My dad's voice whispered in my head, not his warnings this time, but his belief. "You're stronger than you know, Abigail." I stood, my hands steadier, and slipped the phone into my pocket. "I need to call someone," I said. Piper nodded, her trust a small anchor. I dialed Helen, my lawyer, her calm voice cutting through the chaos as I spilled everything. Helen's office was a haven, all warm wood and stacked books, a stark contrast to the boardroom's cold glass. She listened, her pen scratching notes as I recounted the meeting, Piper's recording, Jocelyn's power grab. I paced, my heels sinking into the rug, the keychain in my pocket a grounding weight. Helen leaned back, her eyes sharp. "Your ownership is ironclad," she said. "Your father made sure of it. We can reveal it at the next board meeting, show the recording, and turn this around." I stopped, my breath catching. Reveal it. The words felt like a door swinging open, terrifying, but inevitable. She slid a folder across her desk, my dad's will inside his signature, a lifeline. I opened it, my fingers trembling, and found a note in his handwriting tucked between the pages. "Abigail," it read, "you're the heart of this company. Lead with courage, not fear." My eyes stung, his faith a fire igniting in my chest. Helen watched me, her voice gentle. "He knew you'd face this," she said. "He trusted you to fight." I nodded, the weight of his words settling into me, heavy but empowering. I left her office with a plan we'd present my ownership at the board meeting in a week, backed by the recording and legal proof. I texted Piper asking her to send the video to 2 board members I trusted, Gail and Curtis, with a note to keep it quiet. My phone buzzed as I walked a reply from Piper Dunn. "You've got this." I slipped the phone into my bag. My steps firmer now. The city felt alike around me, its energy seeping into my bones. I wasn't just fighting for my job anymore. I was fighting for my dad's dream, for the truth. And for the first time in days, I felt like I could win. The week crawled by, each day a tightrope walk between dread and determination. I kept my routine at home, brewing coffee, answering emails. But my mind was on the board meeting. I stood in my closet picking an outfit and pulled out a crisp blazer, one I'd worn when I first joined the company. My fingers brushed a small tie pin my dad's tucked in a drawer from years ago. I pinned it to my lapel, its weight a quiet promise. I wasn't hiding anymore. I met Sadie for lunch at a diner, the clatter of plates grounding us. She slid into the booth, her eyes searching mine. "You're really doing this?" she asked, stirring her tea. I nodded, my voice low. "I have to. Jocelyn's rallying the team against you," she said. "She's saying you're unstable, a risk." I gripped my mug, the heat biting my palms. "Let her," I said. "The truth's coming out." Sadie's frown softened and she reached for my hand. "I'm with you," she said. I squeezed back, her loyalty a spark in the dark. The morning of the meeting, I arrived early, the office still waking up. Gail, the board member who'd known my dad, caught me in the hallway. She touched the tie pin, her eyes warm. "He'd be proud," she said. I swallowed hard, nodding, her words fueling the fire in my chest. I slipped into the boardroom, Helen at my side, her briefcase packed with my ownership papers. The table was set, chairs filled with board members, Gregory at the head, Jocelyn beside him, her posture rigid, expectant. I took a seat, my heart steady now, the tie pin glinting under the lights. Gregory started, his voice droning about quarterly goals, but I barely heard him. My eyes locked on Jocelyn, her confident tilt of the head, unaware of the storm coming. Helen nudged me, and I stood, my voice cutting through the room. "I have something to address," I said, calm but firm. Gregory faltered, his pen still. Jocelyn's eyes narrowed, a flicker of unease crossing her face. I nodded to Helen, who opened her laptop and played Piper's recording. Jocelyn's voice filled the room, her demand for my firing sharp and unyielding, Gregory's weak agreement echoing. Gasps rippled through the board. I stepped forward, holding up the ownership documents, my dad's signature bold on the page. "This company is mine," I said, my voice unwavering. "My father left it to me, and I've been silent too long." Jocelyn's face drained of color, her hands gripping the table. Gregory stammered, papers scattering. Helen laid out the legal proof, her tone crisp as board members leaned in, stunned. Jocelyn tried to interrupt, her voice shrill. "This is absurd," she said. "Those documents are fake." Helen shut her down, sliding notarized copies across the table. The room tilted, power shifting under my feet. I looked at Gregory, his eyes wide, and felt a pang of pity, but it passed. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. As the board murmured, Gail caught my eye, her nod a quiet affirmation. I stood taller, the tie pin heavy against my chest. Jocelyn's glare burned, but I met it unflinching. For the first time, I wasn't the woman in the navy dress shrinking under her words. I was my father's daughter, claiming what was mine. I sat down, my hands steady, and let the silence speak its weight louder than any shout. The boardroom cleared, leaving an echo of stunned whispers and shuffled papers. I stayed seated, my hands resting on the table, the ownership documents still open in front of me. Helen gathered her notes, her nod a quiet reassurance, but the air felt heavy, like the room was holding its breath. Outside, the office hummed with its usual rhythm, unaware of the earthquake I'd just triggered. My chest was tight, not with fear now, but with the weight of what came next. By noon, the board's decision came through an email, curt and formal. I was reinstated, effective immediately. Gregory was demoted to a junior role, his authority stripped. Jocelyn was banned from all company premises, her consultant title revoked. I read the words, my coffee cold, on my desk, and felt no triumph, only a hollow relief. The truth was out, but the cost was written in the faces around me. Colleagues passed my desk, their greetings clipped their eyes, skimming past like I was a stranger. I called a team meeting in the conference room, its long table scuffed from years of use. The team filed in, some curious, others guarded. Sadie sat near me, her smile tentative but real. Bethany was absent, her resignation letter already on my desk, a single line citing personal reasons. I stood, my voice steady but soft. I owe you all honesty, I said. I've been the owner since my father passed, but I stayed silent to earn my place, not demand it. I want us to rebuild together. The room was quiet, a few nods, but most faces stayed blank, processing the shift. After I walked through the office, the clatter of keyboards louder than usual. Piper approached, her arms crossed, a handmade card in her hand. The interns made this, she said, her voice shy. It's to say thanks for standing up. I opened it, colorful signatures sprawling across the page, and my throat tightened. Their support was a flicker of warmth, but it didn't erase the tension in the air. Whispers followed me, questions about my secrecy, doubts about my youth. I'd won the battle, but trust was another war. At home that night, I poured a glass of wine, the kitchen dim except for a single lamp. My phone buzzed, Aaron's name flashing. I answered, bracing myself. He didn't waste time. So you're the big boss now, he said, his voice thick with scorn. Think you can just cut me out? I want my share, Abigail. I set the glass down, my fingers cold. Dad chose me, I said, my voice even. You know why. He laughed, bitter and sharp, and hung up. His words lingered, a reminder of the family I'd lost in this fight. I sat on the couch, the card from the interns open beside me. Their faith clashed with Aaron's venom, with the team's wary glances, with the void where Gregory's mentorship used to be. I'd reclaimed my place, but the ground beneath me felt fragile, like ice ready to crack. The company was mine, but so was the weight of every doubt, every fracture I'd exposed. I stared at the card, its bright ink blurring, and wondered if I'd ever feel steady again. The next morning, I drove to a lakeside cabin, the site of a company retreat I'd planned to mend the cracks my reveal had left. The gravel crunched under my tires, the water glinting through the trees, but my mind was on the office, on the guarded looks I'd left behind. I stepped out, the air crisp with pine, and greeted the team as they arrived, their chatter subdued. Sadie hugged me, her warmth a small comfort, but others kept their distance, their smiles polite but thin. I led a team-building session under a wooden pavilion, the lake lapping softly nearby. I asked for ideas to improve our work, hoping to bridge the gap. Miles spoke up, suggesting better training for new hires, his voice steady. Piper added a plan for mentorship programs, her enthusiasm cutting through the tension. I listened, nodding my pen, scratching notes, but I felt their eyes on me, weighing my every word. They were trying, but the trust I'd hoped for felt just out of reach. At lunch, I sat with Loretta, a veteran employee who'd worked with my dad. She passed me a plate of grilled chicken, her hands weathered but sure. Your father had that same fire, she said, her voice low. He once gave me a raise from his own pocket when the company was struggling. You're like him, Abigail, but they don't see it yet. Her words landed heavy, a mix of pride and ache. I thanked her, my voice catching, but her story lingered, a reminder of the legacy I was fighting for. The retreat ended with a group photo, everyone clustered by the water. I stood in the back, forcing a smile, but the camera caught what I felt, a team still unsure of me. Back in the office, the mood was lighter, but the undercurrent remained. Curtis, a board member, cornered me in the hallway, his brow furrowed. You're young for this, he said. Leading's not just ownership, it's earning loyalty. His doubt stung, but Gail overheard, stepping in. She's already started, she said, her voice firm. Give her time. I nodded, grateful, but Curtis's words stuck a mirror to my own fears. That evening, I found a letter in my mailbox, the paper creased, Aaron's handwriting on the envelope. I opened it expecting another jab, but it was old, written years ago before our falling out. "I'm sorry I've been hard on you," it read. "I just want to make Dad proud too." My chest tightened the words, a ghost of a bond we'd lost. I folded it carefully, my fingers lingering on the ink, but he hadn't called since his demand for a share. The letter felt like a door half open, one I wasn't sure I could walk through. I stood at my window, the city's lights flickering below, and felt the weight of it all: the team's hesitation, Curtis's skepticism, Aaron's unreachable pain. I'd taken back my place, but it came with a cost I hadn't foreseen. The company was mine, but it felt like a house of cards, each move threatening to topple it. I pressed my hand to the glass, the cold biting my palm, and let the quiet settle. I'd fought for this, but now I was standing alone and the silence was louder than any victory. I pushed open the door to my office, the scent of fresh paint mingling with the faint musk of old wood. I'd had it redecorated, swapping the sterile gray for warm beige, and moved my dad's old oak desk to the center. Sunlight spilled through the window, catching dust motes in the air, and I set my coffee down, the mug's warmth steadying my hands. This space was mine now, not just in title, but in feel, a small claim on the future I was building. Piper knocked her notepad tucked under her arm. I'd hired her as my assistant, her quiet grit a reminder of what I'd fought for. She hesitated, then slid a folder across the desk. "It's the new project timeline," she said, her voice eager. I flipped through it, her neat handwriting outlining goals we'd brainstormed together. "You're good at this," I said, and her cheeks flushed. "I'm learning from you," she replied. I smiled, the words settling deep, a sign I was doing something right. We spent the morning reviewing plans, her questions sharp and thoughtful. I found myself explaining my dad's old strategies, how he'd balance ambition with care for his team. Teaching her felt like passing on a piece of him, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was carrying his legacy alone. Piper scribbled notes, her energy infectious, and I caught a glimpse of the leader she might become. It made me think of my own path, how I'd stumbled but kept going. I took a break at noon, stepping onto the office balcony. The city hummed below, a steady pulse of life. I leaned on the railing, the metal cool under my palms, and let my mind wander. The fight with Jocelyn felt distant now, its sharp edges softened by time. I'd lost things: Gregory's trust, Aaron's goodwill, the ease of blending in, but I'd gained something too. I wasn't the woman who'd shrunk at the party anymore. I was learning to stand tall, not for approval, but for myself. Back inside, I hung a small frame on the wall, a photo of me and my dad at the company's first office. Him grinning, me barely 10, holding a stapler like a trophy. Piper peeked in, noticing it. "That's sweet," she said. I nodded, my throat tight. "He built this place," I said. "I'm just trying to keep it alive." She tilted her head, her eyes soft. "You're doing more than that," she said. "You're making it better." Her words landed gently, a quiet truth I was starting to believe. I sat at the desk, the photo catching the light, and felt a calm I hadn't known in years. The office buzzed, outside phones, ringing, voices overlapping, but in here it was just me and the work. I opened a new file, sketching out a plan for a community outreach program, something my dad had always wanted. My pen moved steadily, each word a step towards something bigger. For once I wasn't running from the past or fighting for the present. I was building, and it felt like enough. I left the office at dusk, the sky bruised with purple, and drove to a nearby park, craving open air. The lot was nearly empty, just a few joggers winding down. I walked a narrow path, gravel crunching under my boots, the scent of damp grass sharp in the cool evening. My hands were in my pockets, my breath visible in small clouds, and I let the quiet wrap around me, a soft contrast to the noise of the past months. I found a bench by a pond, its surface still reflecting the first stars. I sat, my scarf loose around my neck, and spotted Gail across the path, her silver hair catching the light. She was feeding ducks, her movements slow, deliberate. I waved and she joined me, her coat rustling as she settled in. We didn't talk much at first, just watched the water ripple. Then she spoke, her voice steady. "Leadership's lonely sometimes," she said. "But you're finding your way." I nodded, her words sinking in, simple but heavy with truth. She told me about her early days, mistakes she'd made, people she'd lost along the way. It wasn't about being perfect, she said, but about showing up even when it hurt. I listened, my hands clasped, thinking of my own stumbles, the choices that had cost me Aaron's trust, Gregory's respect. I used to think strength meant winning, I said. Now I think it's just keeping going. Gail smiled, her eyes crinkling. That's the real work, she said. And you're doing it. We parted ways, her figure fading into the twilight, and I stayed a moment longer, the pond's calm pulling me in. A kid ran by chasing a stray ball, and it rolled to my feet. I picked it up, its surface worn, and tossed it back. His grin a fleeting gift. I thought of my dad, how he'd find joy in small things, a laugh, a shared meal. I'd spent so long fighting to prove myself, I'd forgotten how to just be. I pulled out my phone, hesitating, then dialed Aaron. It went to voicemail, his clipped greeting unchanged. I took a breath, my voice soft. I'm here if you want to talk, I said. No demands, just us. I hung up, the words lingering in the air, not a fix, but an offering. I didn't expect a reply, and that was okay. I'd carried his anger too long. Now I was setting it down, not with resentment, but with a quiet wish for peace. I stood, my boots scuffing the gravel, and walked back to my car. The park was emptying, the night settling in, and I felt lighter, like I'd shed a layer I didn't need. The fight wasn't over, the doubts weren't gone, but I wasn't running anymore. I was here in this moment, and it was enough. I glanced at the pond one last time, its surface smooth again, and drove home, the stars bright above guiding me forward. A year later, I stood at the edge of the company's anniversary gala, the same downtown venue now draped in soft gold lights. The hum of voices filled the air, glasses, clinking, laughter weaving through the crowd. I wore a tailored blazer, sharp but simple, my hair pulled back, and felt the room's energy shift as I moved through it. Not as an outsider, not as a secret, but as myself, Abigail, the woman who'd fought to stand here. I leaned against a pillar, watching my team mingle. Piper, now confident in her new role, chatted with a group of interns, her laughter bright. Sadie caught my eye from across the room, raising her glass in a quiet toast. I smiled back, my chest warm. The gala was my idea, a way to mark not just the company's milestone, but our own, the slow rebuilding of trust after the storm. I'd poured weeks into planning it, choosing every detail to reflect what we'd become. Loretta approached her retirement party, still fresh in my mind. She pressed a small book into my hands, its leather cover worn. Your dad's old journal, she said, her voice soft. Found it in storage. He wrote about you a lot. I opened it later alone in a quiet corner and found pages of his thoughts, his hopes for me scrawled in tight script. Abigail's got a fire no one can dim, he'd written. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. I tucked the journal into my bag, a piece of him I'd carry forward. The crowd parted as I stepped to the podium, the microphone humming softly. I looked out, faces familiar and new, and spoke, my voice steady. This company is more than numbers, I said. It's people, ideas, the belief we can do better. I shared a story of my dad, how he'd stay late to help a struggling employee, his kindness the root of everything we built. The room listened, some nodding, others still, and I felt the weight of their trust, fragile but growing. I invited Aaron, a last-minute choice, and spotted him near the back, his posture stiff but present. He didn't smile, but he was here, a small step after months of silence. I didn't push, didn't expect miracles. I'd learned that healing wasn't about fixing everything. It was about showing up, letting time do the rest. I stepped down, the applause soft but real, and joined the crowd, my shoulders lighter than I'd expected. Later, I stood by the bar, sipping water, watching the night unfold. The music slowed, couples swaying on the dance floor, and I felt a quiet pride. Not in the victory over Jocelyn, not in the title I now wore openly, but in the small ways we'd grown. I'd started morning walks to clear my head, kept a notebook for ideas, learned to listen more than I spoke. These weren't grand gestures, just choices, each one stitching me back together. I breathed in the air, cool and clean, and let the moment hold me steady and whole. The gala wound down, the crowd thinning as the band played its final notes. I slipped outside to the venue's terrace, the night air cool against my skin, the city's lights a soft glow below. I leaned on the railing, my hands loose, and let my thoughts settle. A year ago, this place had been a battlefield, my confidence shredded by sharp words and sharper betrayals. Now standing here, I felt different, not unbroken, but pieced back together, stronger at the seams. I thought about the months since the quiet mornings I'd spent rebuilding. I'd started hosting open forums at work, letting the team share ideas, their voices shaping our path. Piper's mentorship program had launched, pairing new hires with veterans, and I saw my dad's spirit in it, his belief that everyone deserved a chance to grow. Aaron and I hadn't fully mended, but we'd met for coffee once. His guard lower, our words, careful but honest. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, and I'd learned to be okay with that. I pulled my jacket tighter, the breeze carrying a faint scent of rain. The journal Loretta gave me was at home now on my bedside table, its pages a map of my dad's hopes. I didn't read it every day, but I carried its truth that I was enough, not because I won, but because I kept showing up. I'd spent so long chasing approval, fearing judgment, but the real fight was within, learning to trust my own heart, to forgive myself for the moments I'd faltered. The lesson wasn't loud or grand. It was simple, worn like a favorite coat. Life will break you sometimes through betrayal, sometimes through your own mistakes, but it's not the breaking that defines you. It's the choice to rebuild, to choose kindness over bitterness, to stand in your truth, even when it's heavy. I'd learned to hold space for my flaws, to see Aaron's pain without carrying it, to lead, without needing to prove. That was freedom, the kind that didn't shout, but whispered, steady and sure. I turned back to the venue, the last guests waving goodbye, their silhouettes warm against the lights. I felt rooted, not to the company alone, but to the woman I'd become, someone who could bend without breaking. The terrace was empty now, just me and the night, and I let out a slow breath, the weight of the past slipping away like water through my fingers. What moment in your life taught you to trust yourself again? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments, to know what's helped you find your way. If this story resonated, please like and subscribe and share it with someone who might need it. Thank you for listening, for being here. I hope you carry a little light with you tonight, wherever you are.